Hey, welcome back to the Defiant Spirit. Dr. Baruch Halevi, also known as B. I am the creator of the Defy Your Number Enneagram system, and today we are talking about not just the Enneagram, we're getting into that. We're going to talk about one particular individual who brings the Enneagram to life. In fact, everything he does, he seems to bring to life and to win, because this guy is a winner on every level, which is why we're talking about Enneagram 3 and Deion Sanders, known as Neon Deion, known as Prime Time, and known as Coach Prime. So I've been asked multiple times over the past 24 hours, why don't I do a talk on the Enneagram and Neon Deion? Because I live here in Colorado, and it is the talk of the town. It's truthfully, it's the talk of the nation. I mean, every single news media outlet I've turned on, 60 Minutes, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, everybody's talking about Coach Prime and what he's done, what he is doing, and potentially what he will do at the University of Colorado, where I shall say I have two children. One of them is marginally interested in football. The other one doesn't even know who Deion Sanders is, or at least she didn't know until a few months ago. But you can't help but be swept up by this man, by this transformation of a college football program, and really, in some ways, I think a revitalization, or certainly a shift in college sports and college football in particular. So we're going to try and talk about all of that. But to me, first and foremost, this is about the Enneagram. I like using celebrities. I like using recognizable people to bring to life the Enneagram, because it can be a little bit complex at times. However, I find when we use somebody's real life and we talk through some of the Enneagram principles, it's more sticky. It's so important to have a roadmap in life. And this is a roadmap for me and for so many others. Turn off a weird flashing light here. Who are turning to the Enneagram now more than ever before. You know, the Enneagram has been around for thousands of years. It's evolved over the past 50 years or so. And it's really taken root as of late because it's so sticky. It's so usable, so different than other typing systems, personality typing systems, because of its, I think, of its complexity of the layers. And yet it's that same thing that we can lose ourselves. And I've seen it with a lot of Enneagram teachers where they can lose their audience by going too deep into the numbers, into the intricacies, and leaving everybody behind. I want to share with you some of the nuances of the Enneagram, just based on this one picture. If you're listening to the podcast, I have a slide, a picture with Deion Sanders and some of the key data points that I've gathered. And so you can download that on my website under the podcast page. Just go to thedefiantspirit.org. Yeah, defiantspirit.org forward slash podcast. Scroll to the bottom and you'll see this slide. Whether you're listening, whether you're watching, let's talk about Neon Deion. Now, I don't know if he's ever done an Enneagram assessment. I didn't find any of this data out there. This is just me sitting and sifting and working through the process of what he is. So I'll share with you my thoughts on that. But Deion, if you're listening, if you want to take a test, give me a shout, and I'd be happy to give you, by the way, the premium Enneagram assessment on the market, the only test that anybody should take. The rest of the tests out there are mediocre to garbage. The one I use is a higher price point, but it's truly a remarkable test. Now, with that said, you don't need a test. Nobody needs to take an Enneagram test. You simply need to understand the Enneagram and discover yourself, your number, on your own terms. Nobody should tell you who you are and what you're about. That's for you and you alone to decide. So I have a program called Discover Your Number, completely complimentary, where you can go and you can walk through all 9 types to understand what they are, who they are, and why they do what they do, and you can discover your number in it. I say that because I'm never that comfortable typing other people. I'm a logotherapist, a meaning-centered psychotherapist, and I teach people to live what my teacher and mentor, Dr. Viktor Frankl, taught, to live your defiant power of the human spirit, to never allow anybody to reduce you. When I do this, when I talk about Neon, Deion's, Coach Prime's Enneagram type, This is just my understanding of who he is and how he moves through the world based on what I've seen. And really, again, only Deion Sanders can decide that for himself. However, I do type other people. I do use this in my life to navigate, but I walk mindfully through this sort of minefield, making sure not to reduce anybody, but using it as a sort of guiding, not governing path and way of relating to people. Okay, so let's talk about Deion Sanders and his Enneagram type. One of the reasons also why I like to share this, typing process with people is because I don't have the definitive answer. I like to make the case. I like to put together a case around why somebody might be this type. However, again, not having seen Deion's assessment, never having sat down with him, I look forward to that changing. I'm in Boulder, Colorado, Deion at least once a week. I go through a process and I can be swayed in a different direction. This is my first attempt at typing Deion Sanders, and I want to share with you the process because to me it's as meaningful as the outcome. Okay, I put Deion Sanders as an Enneagram 3, the achiever. So all the noise on this slide right now, all the words and numbers around Deion's picture, just disregard all of that for now and just look at the green, the Enneagram 3, the achiever, and that's what he is in my system. Some people call it the performer, other names out there. I think it's the achiever because that's what Deion Sanders is all about. Enneagram 3s achieve. It's one of those Enneagram labels that really needs no further clarification. Now, these are folks who not only achieve, but they need to achieve. They need to win. Every Enneagram type has the shadow and the light, the blessing and the curse. The blessing of the Enneagram 3 is that they know what it takes to succeed. However, as we'll get into, that can be their curse as well. Now, they've probably been doing this since they were little kids. We live in an Enneagram 3 culture, certainly in America, but probably in the West, where we reward success. Success breeds more success. I see it in Little League sports where a kid who's just a little bit better than the rest then gets more opportunities and goes to the next level because he or she's provided with even more. And it's this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's an upward spiral. It builds on itself. So Deion Sanders most certainly was an achiever as a kid, a winner as a kid, probably in Pop Warner football, and it just kept happening, one opportunity after the next after the next. That's what I see with Enneagram 3s. They just have this sort of Midas touch, this magic touch, and their life seems to the rest of us almost like it flows very easily without a lot of hard work. That's only a deception. In some ways, that's what a 3 wants you to see, especially one of the subtypes. There are 3 subtypes. We'll get into that. The self-preservation really wants you to see that they don't work hard. That commercial, never let them see you sweat. I think in many ways that's a self-preservation 3, but a 3 in general, because they want to look like they're succeeding somewhat effortlessly or gracefully. They have this persona, this image about them like no other type. Enneagram 3s care deeply how they're being perceived. They're always hyper aware of who's around them and what the perception is. And when you start to really watch Deion Sanders, he has a highly curated image. That cowboy hat he's wearing and those sunglasses, which have been the talk of the country all week, are by design. And there's merch to be sold around those. So not only is he succeeding on the field, but he's succeeding off the field. This is how 3s can move through life. And again, to us as outsiders, it just looks so smooth and elegant and seamless, but they're sort of like a duck, right? Paddling furiously under the water, oftentimes when it looks like it's just smooth sailing up above. If you look at the mega stars, the mega superstar athletes, they tend to be Enneagram 3s. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Kobe Bryant. I'm just kind of free flowing here. LeBron James, Michael Phelps, Simone Biles. The list is staggering. When you look at the mega star athletes, they tend to be threes. Michael Jordan. I mean, really, it goes on and on and on. Because to get to that level of stardom, you have to be more than all in. It has to be your lifeblood, your oxygen, your everything. This is where you get into the shadow side of the three. The threes can go so deep and so all in that they start to become almost machines. They are the human doings, not the human beings. And they can do a lot of damage on the process, in the process of climbing the mountain to get to the top. Oftentimes they'll step on people to get to the top, or they may compromise on their principles, on their values. I've said it a lot, but a lot, if not most, of the athletes who get busted for something, whether it's doping or whether it's gambling or whatever it might be, tend to be Enneagram 3s. Lance Armstrong, Pete Rose, Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco, again, just off the top of my head, Barry Bonds. These are threes who will stop at nothing to ultimately win. Now, we are complicit in that. We contribute to that because we just say win, win, win. Again, from the time they're 3 until the time they're 93, we have been telling them one message, and if they're not careful, they can lose themselves down the slippery slope of self-deceit. So threes have a slippery side to them. It doesn't mean they're liars, but it does mean that they sort of play with the edges of truth. I've been listening to interviews with Deion Sanders this week, and he plays with that slippery edge of identity where he's in character, he's in a role, but then he starts becoming the role, and it's almost like he believes he is the role. In fact, he refers to himself as Coach Prime and Prime Time. So there's this mask that a 3 can wear. Fine, we all wear masks, but 3s are the ones who can get into trouble when they start believing they are the mask. They can do great damage to themselves and to others. And you'll hear, he was challenged a couple times. I forget what the question was. It was something to the effect of, did you have any doubts about any of the games that you played, or for whatever it was? And you could feel like he wasn't really buying what he was trying to sell. There was a little like this moment of doubt or of insecurity, but boom, he's back in the groove. He's back to prime time, and he's never going to let them see you sweat. Kind of a persona of a mask. Literally, he's wearing sunglasses and he's wearing the cowboy hat, which is something that 3s do. Now, I'm not saying they're disproportionately into cowboy hats, but they are chameleons. They can really take on the look of their environment and be the most successful version of it. So he wasn't wearing this cowboy hat, I don't think, at Jackson State where he was previously coaching, but here in Colorado, it's kind of a look, it's kind of a thing. Not so much in Boulder, but he's playing the part. That's why they're called the performer. And, if it was India, he would take on the Indian successful image, and if it was China, the China successful image. And so 3s are really chameleons, and they adapt and they become winners in whatever circumstance they find themselves in. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's on this slide, because I think it's important to do a little deeper dive into this. Now, I'm not going to go deep into some people call it the tri-type, I call it the whole type, but look at the bottom. It says acts 8, feels 3, thinks 7. The Enneagram has many triads, but the primary triad is the triangle, and you have a 9, 3, and a 6. Well, this is the action triad, or the instinctual triad. I'm pointing at a slide that you can't even see, so I'm not going to bother pointing. Look at the slide on the screen. 8, 9, and 1 are action types, and so one of those is going to be ours. In the case of Deion, I think he's a 3, but when he's in action, he acts like an 8. So that's part of what I call his whole type. It makes up his whole Enneagram profile. Again, some people call it the TRI type, but I prefer whole type. So he acts like an 8. When he's in feeling, 2, 3, and 4 are the feeling choices or types. He feels like a 3, and that happens to be his what I call core type. And when he's thinking, he's either a 5, 6, or 7, because we have one of these that we'll think like. And no doubt about it, he thinks like a 7, the enthusiast. So 8, 3, and 7 is his whole type. I find this to be more useful, infinitely more useful, than just knowing somebody's number. Because if I'm going to make the case for any other number for Deion Sanders, I could make the case that he's a 7, an enthusiast, and I could make the case that he's an 8, the challenger. I do think he's a 3, but that's why I'm not so concerned with whether or not he's a 3, because he does clearly have the 3 qualities. He has the 8 qualities and he has the 7 qualities. Now, if you take those 3 things, the whole type, 8, 3, 7, in his case, it's 3 because that's his type, then probably 7 and then 8. So he's a 3, 7, 8, but it doesn't really matter. It's just sort of nuanced. I call that the powerhouse. 8s are the powerhouse of the 8, 9, and 1s. 3s are the powerhouse of the 2, 3, and 4. And 7 is the powerhouse of the 5, 6, and 7. So he thinks like a powerhouse, he acts like a powerhouse, and he feels like a powerhouse. The dude is a powerhouse. That's his whole type. So whether he's an Enneagram 3, the achiever, or an 8, 3, 7, the powerhouse, this is how he moves through the world, acting, thinking, and feeling. Let me just share with you a little bit about why I think he's an 8, because I'm an 8, and it takes one to know one. Now, I don't think he's as angry as a typical 8. It's partially why I don't see him up in the 8 as his core type, his primary type is an 8, because also, not just the anger, he's much more image conscious than most 8s. And he seems a little less, he seems a little more focused on winning and a little less concerned about the control aspect of it. Like it's really about winning, whereas 8s will win, but it's much more about being in control. And I see he has a lot of control, but it doesn't feel to me to be the primary motivator in his life. The 7, and also, you hear him shut down negative comments. You hear in his pressers him sort of stop a journalist from asking a stupid question, stopping them in their tracks. This is kind of a very abrupt signature of an Enneagram 8, and far less than an Enneagram 3. So I think he really has that 8 quality, and he's just a powerhouse. He powers through things, even physically. The way he moves feels quite 8-ish. So an Enneagram 3 for sure, an Enneagram 8 probably. Enneagram 7, the enthusiast. Again, this is how one thinks. This is the fast thinker. This is the visionary. This is the boom, 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 witty, quick on his feet. And that is Deion Sanders. I mean, the guy is fast on the field. He's fast off the field. He's just a fast thinker. He's clearly a visionary. If you're not following college football, then you may not know, but the game is changing in no small measure, not because of this man. I think he's symbolic of the time, because we're moving from an Enneagram 3 culture and a 3 sport, which again is achievement, it's performance, it's sort of that discipline, to much more of a 7, fast-paced and glitzy, glamour. There's a lot of glitz and glamour around a 7, a lot more fun and fluid and, again, that fast pace. So Deion has both of those. You listen to him, he's very disciplined, he's very structured. That's the 3 piece. Committed to him and all of his players to making sure they are rigorous in their training and that they have been completely effective before they get on the field. But there's also this kind of swagger piece, or this look at me. 3s can have that, and especially his subtype, but 7s have much more of it. They're not afraid of the limelight. They're not afraid of standing out. They're not afraid to have fun. I was just listening to him talk about his deal with Nike. I guess he had a falling out with Nike, and anyways, got back into bed with them. They're sponsoring the Buffaloes and Coach Prime. And he was talking about how important it is to look good in cool uniforms so that the players feel good and feel the vibe out on the field. This is some 3-ish and 7-ish stuff. 8s really wouldn't care much about that. But you can just feel this vision of he sees what's coming and he anticipates it. Threes are forward looking, sevens are forward looking, eights are forward looking. So he's a true visionary. And he's anticipated the change in collegiate sports and football in particular. If you haven't been following it, there's this new thing called the transfer portal, which is a total Enneagram 7 invention. Now players can just jump into the transfer portal, so to speak, and start playing for a new team without a waiting period. They used to have to wait. Now they can just jump in, switch teams, and it's caused a lot of fluidity and movement across NCAA football. Well, he came along at the right time in the right place, not coincidentally. That's that 3 timing he has to capitalize on the transfer portal and totally turning over his roster. And so really right time, right place, or is it vision? And he sees what's coming and he has a great vision about him. That's one of the great qualities about this man. I, by the way, am ambivalent. I'm not sure if I like him or if I hate him. I think that's true with a lot of people with Enneagram 3s who are successful and Enneagram 7s who are fun. Because there's a piece of us that's envious, that they can just go with the flow, that they have that Midas touch, that they can anticipate sort of 2 steps down the next successful move. There's a piece of us that is jealous of that. Of course we are. But there's another piece of us that, genuinely is kind of like has the ick factor when it comes to, especially 3s, somewhat 7s, and that's around the look at me. Prime talks about himself as Coach Prime. He talks about himself in the third person, and sometimes when you listen to him or when you see him on the commercials in between, his own game, it's a little uncomfortable. It's a little flashy, 56-year-old man, no offense, Neon. For a 20-something-year-old guy, it feels much more appropriate. When I see a 56-year-old man do it, I can't tell if it's just him still playing this part or if that's genuinely how he rolls and what he believes. I don't know. There is something about it that rubs the 8 in me the wrong way. But again, maybe that's just coming from a deeper place of envy and wanting to be like Coach Prime. So love him or hate him, but Enneagram 3s and 7s and 8s to some degree don't usually leave people somewhere in between. It's kind of an all or nothing. A couple more things about Coach Prime. So I do believe his subtype is an Enneagram social 3. And it doesn't mean social like he's a good schmoozer. He certainly is. I think that's more to do with his wing, the 2. Social 3 is more of taking the 3 energy. Remember, there's 3 subtypes: social, sexual, and self-preservation. Each type has 3 subtypes, so there's 27 types total. And the subtype takes the Enneagram core type and sort of refracts it or sends that message out to the world in a different way. So with a self-preservation 3, they're much more of a muted 3. I have a good friend, Michael, who's a self-preservation 3. He doesn't really look 3-ish because he almost says the opposite of don't look at me. Enneagram sexual 3s, not having much to do with sex, are really more of a one-to-one focus. They put their attention on others. And so Enneagram 3s, in my experience, who have that sexual instinct, are much more focused on one other person, making other people look good. I think they're called the professional in the... Oh, no, sorry, that's the wing of the 3. So I forget what I call them, but what I call Coach Prime is the social 3. It says on the top here, the motivator. So that's his subtype. He's a social 3. And what that means is that 3 goes out into the world like a social expansiveness, expansion. These are the ones who tend to be larger than life. So if a 3 is commanding a field like a Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or a Coach Prime, they tend to have that social instinct where they're no wallflower. They're not hiding in the light. He was asked in his 60 Minutes interview who he thinks the best coach is out in the world today, and he said, "What do you think I'm going to say? It's me." Now he had some lovely words to say about Nick Saban, but at the end of the day, a social 3 is really in it to win it, and that can become a self-absorbed. I won't say narcissistic, That's a more of a clinical disorder, but a self-referencing, a self-focused, a self-absorbed mindset. Again, who's to judge? I mean, you don't get this far in life as Coach Prime, playing in multiple sports, playing on both sides of the ball, playing now as the coach and winning by being meek, by being falsely modest. I don't think you're going to meet too many social threes who could even try. So Deion has this social sort of instinct, this go out into the world, this three achievement, and that can turn into a lot of look at me, but it can also turn into sort of get behind me, follow, because we're going to the top, fellas, which is what he says about himself and about his players. One other key feature of the Enneagram, a good opportunity to teach on the wings. People oftentimes are confused about the wings. They'll say, hey, I'm a 3 with a 5 wing, or I'm a 1 with a 7 wing. Wings are on they're, what's the word I'm looking for? They're on either side of your Enneagram type. So adjacent, that's the word. So a 3 can only have a wing that's a 2 or a wing that's a 4. Now, I come from a school of thought that says we have both. We probably develop them in different ways at different times. We lean on them for different things. I would say in this case, Coach Deion has a definitive 2 wing. So that just means you take this 3 energy and you bring some of the 2 qualities. Well, that 2 quality is very likable. And you know, the 3 wing 2, or the 3 with a 2 wing, I call that, or it's called I believe it's called the charmer, is charming. I mean, there's the 2 and the 3 are the most charming, other-oriented of all the Enneagram types. So you sort of get that space between them where there's a real charm, undeniable, like a sparkle quality that Deion has. And I feel he's leaning into that 2 wing. I also think he genuinely cares about his athletes. The way he talks about them, all of them, not just his 2 sons who are playing, but all of them, you can feel like this is a guy who really cares. It's not an act. And I think that that's part of his salvation, if you will, that if he didn't lean that heavily into the 2 wing, the 3 piece could dominate. It could be too much. You add up all these factors, that social piece, that 3, 7, and 8, and a guy like that, he could lose himself. But I think that 2 piece of him really keeps him in check and keeps his heart open, serving the people around him, a nurturing quality that he might not otherwise have. You know, it's interesting. That's also the nurturing, the helper, the giver, the lover. It's a parental quality, and I've been touched by the way he talks about his sons. I only know for a fact that he has 3. One's the cornerback, one's the quarterback, and then the third one, I don't know the third one's name, is his PR, one of his PR guys. So he's doing a lot of the videography and the promotional stuff, which is very 3-ish. Like a 3 might have a videographer or a PR person by his side. But I listen to the way he talks about all 3 of his boys, almost like they're equal in his eyes, when it could be the star quarterbacks at the top. So there's a real nurturing parental quality to Coach Deion and the way he talks about the other athletes, that I think that is the 2 warmth and the 3 achievement coming together to offer the best of what they have to offer. What else can I tell you about Coach Prime? I mean, that's a lot, and most people don't go this deep into sort of the data of the Enneagram. I love going deep into it because the deeper you go, the more powerful the system becomes in helping you understand others, in helping you understand yourself. And as my teacher, Viktor Frankl, says, to stop living in reaction and become responsible, able to choose your response. So when I work with people, we start with just their Enneagram type, excuse me, but then we go through this process of developing the subtype, the instincts, the whole type, how we act, think, feel, the wings. We didn't even talk about the lines. And that's a process. So we never jump into the deep end. We just start with the basics. And I've divided it up that way, just so you know, in my programs. So Discover Your Number is a complementary Enneagram tool that I've created. So you could Jump on to my site and discover your Enneagram type. You don't need to take a test. If you do take a test, take one with me, and I'll administer a top-notch premium product, not a garbage product that you're going to buy out there. And it's an investment. It's not a huge investment, but it's an investment. But you don't need to. You can discover your Enneagram number. I give you all 9 types, everything you need, so you can go through. And that way you can also discover your whole type. Hey, this is my thinking, but this is my feeling, and this is my action. When you do an Enneagram test, you're just checking boxes. You don't learn anything. You don't get a say or a voice in the process. Discover Your Number is there for you to learn about the Enneagram, not just figuring out your core type and then expanding to your whole type. Then going through that into Own Your Number, a lower price point introduction to the Enneagram. So you get all 9 numbers, all 9 types, and everything you need to start understanding or owning your number or all 9 of the numbers. And so that's the next program. And then I have Defy Your Number, which is where you get into the lines and the wings and the whole type and the instincts and everything else. But you can stop. Each one of those points along the way is an opportunity for you to stop. Maybe you got what you needed. Discover your number, own your number, defy your number. It's all there for you. Follow the link in the notes below and jump over to, at the very least, take the complimentary offering that I've created for you, Discover Your Number. Thank you for Deion for being such a good sport and letting us utilize his Enneagram profile as I see it. Again, not hard science, but now you sort of get a glimpse into the process of what I go through when I'm profiling people, when I'm trying to understand, not to reduce them to a number, but when I want to be able to relate to them, to respond to them. This is a process that I might go through, and it's certainly a process I work through with my clients. Last point, we can do this with the people you love in your family, so they don't have to take an Enneagram test. They can, but we can also talk through the living, but also the dead. And I call this the Geneagram. A genogram meets the Enneagram, where I'm working with clients to understand who their parents were, their grandparents were through the Enneagram, and you can put it around the Enneagram, and it's transformative, sort of like a emotional, spiritual 23andMe. Ooh, I like that. I'm going to run with that. Until the next time, discover your number, own your number, and defy your number. And I'll see you over at thedefiantspirit.org.